Hello, welcome back. Today we're out in the snow at the Fort Logan National Cemetery. It is a military cemetery established in 1887. There are over 150,000 memorials here for veterans, soldiers, and their families. Today we're going to be visiting the grave of Emily Howell Warner. She's the first woman captain of a U.S. airline. So follow me in the snow and we'll try to find her grave.
Oh, I just love it, and I love the people associated with it, and it just gets in your blood. It's I've got 21,000 hours of flying time, which is a lot. We had a wonderful English teacher, and one of the books that she introduced me to was a book called Wind, Sand, and Stars, and it was about flying. And I just thought it was the most fascinating book I ever read. And it was a beautiful day, blue skies, snow on the mountains. I got on the airplane and I was the only person on the airplane. And right after we took off, being very curious, I said, "Do you think that I could go up and see the cockpit?" And the flight attendant or stewardess said, "Sure, I think so." And she said, "I'll see if they'll let you come up." They opened the door and I looked out the front window. And I thought, this is neat. And the co-pilot said, and I'll never forget it, and he changed my life. He said, "If you think you like flying so much, why don't you take flying lessons?" And I said, "Flying lessons?" I said, "Can a girl take flying lessons?" And he said, "Sure you can." And he told me where to go, and it was Clinton Aviation. So I talked to my mother and I told her I'd been out to check on flying lessons, and she already knew how much I liked it. They were $12.75 an hour. And I was making $38 a week. So I got a couple lessons and I had 2 or 3 more, and then she noticed that I'd go out once a week. She said, "I don't know about this, Emily. I still think it's kind of foolish." My keynote was always, "Well, just a couple more, Mom, just a couple more." I said, "Mother, guess what? I soloed the airplane." And she said, "You mean you went by yourself?" And she just thought for a minute, and she said, "Well, I guess that's okay." She said, "Well, maybe these flying lessons are okay." I couldn't believe it. United was hiring pilots with a commercial license, but they didn't have an instrument rating, but they had a college degree. So they gave these students to us to get them their instrument rating, and I did nothing but a whole year of teaching, giving these guys an instrument rating, and they already had a job as a pilot with an airline. And I had more time than they did. I had 2,500 hours when they had 160. I did kind of get discouraged at one point, and I knew that the airlines were going to hire a woman, and it was getting close. I just knew in my heart, and I thought, you know, if it's not soon, I'm going to miss it. And I looked at Mr. O'Neill and I said, "Mr. O'Neill, I want the job." And he said, "Well," he said, "you have the job," he said. And he said something very significant. "Well, we want it to be good for Frontier, and we want it to be good for you, and it should be good for women in aviation, or women." Through the years, I've tried to be a mentor to a lot of young women. You know, if you really want to do something, I don't care what field you're in, if you just keep working on it, just whatever it takes. I can sum up my career in aviation as luck and timing. Being lucky enough to fly in an airplane the first time and like it, and the timing of going through being a flight instructor, and the timing through the 60s to where the country was changing their attitude. The timing was just perfect, and it worked out that I became the first woman airline pilot in the United States. My first scheduled flight was on a Boeing 737. It took about a year for me to be really accepted as one of the pilots. One of the senior captains I was flying with called me, "Oh, you're just one of the fellas," and I knew I was in. In fact, somebody said, "What do you want us to call you?" When I got my captain's position. "Do you want a woman pilot, aviatrix, what?" I said, "Captain will be just fine."
Emily Howell Warner was born on October 30th, 1939 in Denver, Colorado, and graduated from Holy Family High School. Warner was interested in airplanes as a child, and after graduating high school, she looked into becoming a flight attendant. At 17, she decided on a career in piloting. After her first trip on an airplane, she was allowed to sit in the cockpit of a plane flying her home after a trip away from Denver. She started flying in 1958 after getting the approval of her parents for lessons. She sometimes worked 14 hours a day with a morning flight, a full-time office job, and an evening flight. She obtained her private pilot license and got a job as a flying traffic reporter within a year. She took a job as a receptionist for a Clinton Aviation Company in Denver to pay for her instruction. She worked there as a flight instructor after obtaining additional certificates as a commercial pilot and flight instructor and instrument and multi-engine ratings. She worked extra maintenance flights, such as delivering airplane parts or planes in order to build her hours. She also flew with a reporter to provide traffic reports. From 1945 to 1968, Clinton Aviation Company operated out of Stapleton Airport in Denver. Warner initially flew for Clinton Aviation as a first officer on Convair 580s and de Havilland Twin Otters. In 1966, United Airlines contracted a test pilot program with Clinton Aviation, and Emily served as one of the 3 pilot instructors for the program. She was later promoted to flight school manager and chief pilot. She became the first woman to be appointed a designated FAA pilot examiner. In 1968, she began applying for a position at Frontier Airlines, as well as Continental Airlines and United Airlines. Lou Clinton wrote letters recommending her. She would renew her applications multiple times over a 5-year period. In late 1972, Warner had been active in the aviation industry for more than 12 years. She had accrued more than 3,500 flight hours as a pilot and 7,000 hours as a flight instructor. Students she had trained were being hired with 1,500 to 2,000 hours of flying time. A friend who worked with Frontier introduced her to the vice president of flight operations there, and Warner persisted in canvassing Frontier for a position. On January 29th, 1973, Frontier Airlines hired her. It was 15 years after her first plane flight. This marked an opening for American women in one of the last sex-segregated occupations in the civilian aviation industry. When Warner was hired, there were no other women working as pilots for the major commercial airlines. By 1978, there were about 300 female commercial pilots in the United States. On February 6, 1973, Warner served for the first time as second officer on a Frontier Airlines Boeing 737. The flight departed from Denver Stapleton's Airport for Las Vegas. Within 6 months, she was promoted to first officer. In 1974, she became the first woman member of the Airline Pilots Association. 3 years later, she became the first woman to earn her captain's wings. In 1976, she became the first woman U.S. airline captain, flying a Twin Otter. Warner continued to fly with Frontier until 1986. Warner stayed on when People Express purchased Frontier, and then itself was purchased by Continental Airlines. After a short time flying for Continental Airlines, she left to become captain of a Boeing 727 for UPS Airlines. She also flew a DC-8 for United Parcel Service. In 1986, she commanded an all-female flight crew. In 1990, she left UPS Airlines to become a Federal Aviation Administration examiner. She was the FAA Aircrew Program Manager, assigned to United States Airlines Boeing 737 fleet. Warner once told Newsday that early in her career, a male pilot remarked that the thought of her in the cockpit ruined his golf game. The second captain, with whom she flew, declined to shake her hand and ordered her not to touch the controls. Her response, she told the Associated Press years later, was simply to be professional. I mean, she said the airplane doesn't know if you're male or female. Warner died on July 3rd, 2020 in Littleton, Colorado at the age of 80 from complications of a fall and Alzheimer's disease. Her career has been recognized by multiple halls of fame, including the National Aviation Hall of Fame, the National Women's Hall of Fame, and she was inducted into the Colorado Women's Hall of Fame in 2002. Her pilot's uniform is on display at the Smithsonian's National Air and Space Museum. Alright, I think she is right down here. Here she is. Emily J. Warner, October 30th, 1939 to July 3rd, 2020, Weaving the Winds. I actually never heard of her before I came across her story, and I thought it was just absolutely amazing. And just so awesome that she was a Colorado girl the whole time, so I brought her some roses here. So thank you, Emily, for paving the way for other women pilots. Hope you enjoyed that video and getting to see the grave of Emily Howell Warner. Please like and subscribe for some more videos, and I'll see you at the next grave. Thanks.